I'm Andrew Norden. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at CODA. I do think the use of real-world evidence carries some risks for potential users. And just to give you a sense of what some of those areas are, I think one of the best described is the risk of bias when interpreting real-world data. And the reason that's an issue is that, let's say we want to do a study based on real-world data where we're comparing patients who have been treated with drug A or drug B. Now, the problem is that the doctors who prescribe drug A versus drug B probably have reasons for making those choices. And those reasons, critics fear, may not be well captured in the data sets that we're using to assess these questions. That is a real issue and one that must be addressed. I think one of the potential ways to address it, and the approach that CODA takes, is to generate a very clinically granular data set. That is to make sure that we extract from electronic medical records all of the key prognostic variables that we know might drive differential outcomes and account for those in our analyses using propensity scores or other statistical methods. Now, the naysayer might argue that there are probably unmeasured variables that we can't extract from electronic medical record data. I think that's true. I think that no one should deny that reality. That is a limitation of real-world data, and that's why we have to be careful about how we apply this. We have to be careful that the effect size that we look for in real-world data maybe needs to be bigger than an effect size that would be persuasive if it was drawn from a randomized clinical trial. That's just one example. I think the other issue one has to watch out for is that the quality of the data varies by provider and by source. So some sources are simply not well designed to answer certain questions. EMR data provides a certain level of clinical granularity, but on the other hand, if a patient leaves the provider where the EMR that you're tracking is, then you may lose important pieces of information. That can be addressed with claims data, but on the other hand, claims data lacks clinical granularity and only talks to you about healthcare transactions. So I think when I think about this, the advice I would give a potential user is to be really cautious and judicious, to make sure that you know that the data source or sources that you're looking at are well designed to answer the questions that you have, that whomever is extracting the data is doing it in a reproducible, high quality, auditable way where you have a trail of data from start to finish, that you're not asking the data to answer questions that simply can't be satisfactorily addressed. And I think, frankly, we don't need to start by trying to replace clinical trials. I think we can start by saying, how do learnings from real-world evidence-based sources extend our understanding from clinical trials? And if you start that way, with looking for an extension of information, you're trying to complement randomized controlled trial data with real-world data. I think that you're not so far out on a limb as if you say, my mission is to replace randomized controlled trials.